Hey, welcome back to my channel. I'm Caleb and this is Drowning in Yarn. As things have been super hectic for me lately, with work being super busy still, and I'm still in the middle of my move, I've been focusing on my totally rad ribbed socks in the few moments that I have to knit. I'm halfway through my second sock, which I feel like I've been knitting these socks forever, but I really don't mind because I really love knitting socks. If you watched my previous video, you saw that I've been kind of stressed out lately, and my Forbes pullover has really been kind of a calming project for me, but I got to a point where I really need to start making some decisions, so I've put that aside while I'm still kind of in this very hectic period, and I'm focusing on these socks because I think socks are the perfect kind of either background project, I always have a pair on the needles, or just super calming project whenever you just don't have the brain power for anything more complex. So I wanted to talk about some of the fears that I think hold people back whenever they want to start knitting socks, and maybe offer up some suggestions for sock patterns that you could use and sock resources that you could use to get started as a sock knitter if you've never knit socks before. So if you just love talking about socks, or you've always wanted to knit a pair of socks and you've been afraid, then stick around and let's chat. So before we jump into the video, I just wanted to remind you to go ahead and hit that like button while you're watching if you're getting some value out of the video. Also, if you haven't already subscribed, hit the little subscribe button and the bell next to it to get notifications when I post new content. Both of these things help me grow my channel, help support me, and help let me know what content you're enjoying so I know what to make more of in the future. Also, while you're watching, if you think that I've missed something that would be helpful to a new knitter or even an experienced knitter, if you have some other tips or a pattern that you think people should check out, leave a comment down below. So when I first decided that I wanted to knit socks, I was really afraid for three main reasons. First, I thought that knitting a sock was going to be super complicated. The heel construction looked super complex to me. The heel flap and gusset was what I thought a real sock knitter knit. That just seemed so scary. I also was really afraid of knitting with fingering weight yarn. I started crocheting with Lion Brand Thick and Quick, and it was my favorite because I was such a project knitter, especially at the time. I really just liked the instant gratification that that gave me. So the thought of knitting with something so thin and knitting a project that could potentially be, this big and then knitting two of them really freaked me out. I thought it was just going to take too long, and that kind of held me back. And then lastly, I was really afraid that I was not going to be able to get socks to fit my feet, that I was going to have trouble getting them long enough, knowing when to put the heel in, when to start the toe, how to get them to fit around my foot, which if you've watched previous videos, you'll know I still struggle with sometimes. I sometimes pick the wrong number of stitches because I'm lazy, or use the wrong needle size and end up with a sock that's maybe a little bit looser or a little bit tighter than I might want. But that's not the rule, that's the exception. I've knit a lot of socks now. Almost all of them fit me really well. There's a couple that have some mistakes here and there, but I've never knit a pair of socks that's unwearable. I think, you can do that too. So I just wanted to talk about a few of the ways that I think you could get over some of those fears. You may have other fears and they're all totally valid, but I don't think you should let them hold you back. Firstly, I think it's super common for people to be afraid of the heel in the sock because it does seem daunting. I think knitting a sock is not nearly as complex as it looks, and one of the best ways to get over that fear is to be sure that you're using a really good pattern and you're using one from a designer that shares a lot of information. When you're picking a pattern, just think about the skills that you already have. My first socks were these 2 at a time toe up socks from a Kate Atherley class on Craftsy. I started with Judy's Magic Cast On. I did a heel flap and gusset. I learned short rows, German short rows, which are still the only short rows that I know how to do because I really like them. It seemed really scary, but her pattern was really well written and I learned a lot, and so I was able to make it through. But you don't have to do something so complex. If you know how to do short rows or you're comfortable learning, do a pattern with a short row heel. If you're an adventurous beginner, pick a heel flap and gusset. If you don't want to do any of those things, you're scared of the shaping and you can do basic decreases and increases, then pick a pattern with a peasant or afterthought heel. I think getting either a pattern with options for all of the above or specifically searching out a pattern with the construction that you want is a great way to make sure that you're gonna give yourself the best chance of success. So if you are scared that you're not gonna be able to get your socks to fit, just swatch, and swatch again. Swatch for stitch count and swatch for your row gauge, and that's going to help you make sure that when you're following the instructions from the designer, you get a sock that's perfect. Like I said, I've had a few socks recently where I was stressed out, made bad decisions, and they were a little tight. They still fit because socks are so stretchy, so just kind of take comfort in the fact that knitting is a stretchy fabric, so small issues aren't going to make your socks not fit you, and if they're way too big, then you just have some nice cozy house socks. They're too small, you have a great gift to give somebody. But there are some things that you can do to ensure that your socks really fit you. Again, using a really great pattern from a really great designer is gonna be your best bet. But also just keep in mind that you're gonna want a sock that's slightly smaller than your foot, a little bit shorter and a little bit smaller in circumference, about 10% smaller than the widest part of your foot is, and about like ½ an inch shorter than your foot for an adult size. I learned these kind of rules of thumb from an article on Interweave Knit's website, which I'll leave a link to down below, but just definitely do what your pattern says. When I knit those socks that were a little bit tight, I made choices that did not really fit with what the designer said. And if I had just kind of listened, I would have had perfect socks, not just like really good socks. So don't be so afraid of fit. The other thing that's really great with fit is that you can try your socks on as you go. If you knit top down or toe up socks, most of the time you can try them on. If you put your peasant heel or your afterthought heel in as your last step, that sock's gonna be harder to fit because it's just hard to get your foot in there and know what it's gonna be like. But pretty much any other type of sock you can try on as you go, so you'll know if it's too tight, you'll know how much more you need to knit. That's like one of my favorite things about socks, is just kind of like trying them on, getting that satisfaction, knowing that it's working out as I'm doing it. Lastly, I think a lot of people are afraid of how long that they take. I know I was so afraid of that, but as I started knitting socks, I kind of just fell into a nice rhythm with them where they're a background project or a project that I can knit whenever I'm watching TV or whenever I just don't have the brain power for anything more complex, or whenever I get to a point in another project where I have to make a decision that could make or break that project. I sometimes will set it aside if I'm just too stressed out to deal with it, and I'll just knit on my socks. These have been taking me so long because I haven't had a lot of time to knit. I've just leaned into the fact that they take a while, and it's helped me be more of a process knitter. I think it's important to realize that like you don't have to be fast, and how fast other people are is not any of your business. It's none of mine. I knit as fast as I knit, and that's fine. I just kind of treat socks as like, they're a treat for me. I will enjoy them when they're done, and until they're done, I'm gonna enjoy making them. So I also just wanted to leave you with some recommendations. If you're a new sock knitter, you're kind of scared, you don't know where to start, I think that there are a few places that you could start that will give you the best chance at like feeling confident. Two of my favorite resources are Summer Lee from Summer Lee Design Company. You've heard me talk about her a lot if you've been watching my channel. She designs awesome patterns. She has a really great free sock pattern. It's a heel flap and gusset sock. She puts a lot of information on her YouTube channel and her Instagram account. She's a resource that can help you become like an awesome sock knitter. Another person that is super awesome is Earth Tones Girl on Instagram and here on YouTube. On her YouTube channel, she has a sock class called the No Fear sock class, and she has a pattern that goes along with it. She walks you through knitting your first pair of socks. She will make you feel so comfortable as you're knitting her pattern and help you get over that fear and be an awesome sock knitter by the end of your first pair of socks. Another awesome resource is Custom Socks by Atherley. It's a book that I have and love. Pick up her book and you'll learn so much about knitting socks. Finally, I just wanted to say that I think if you're afraid of knitting grown-up size socks for yourself, start with a baby sock. Or Kate Atherley has a couple of training socks out that they're like these little tiny sock patterns knit with worsted weight yarn, and they're heel flap and gusset, She writes that they should take you like a day, an afternoon. It's an awesome way to learn all the techniques without putting in the time. So you could figure out if you're gonna like knitting socks and learn really quickly and get yourself over that hump of learning all those techniques. So whenever you go into your first sock, you go in with just a little bit more confidence. And a baby sock will do that same thing for you. You can find fingering weight baby socks, you can find worsted weight baby socks. I'll leave pattern links down below for ones that I found that have the same construction as an adult sock. And if you don't know a baby, just stash it away for a gift because a baby will come along. But I think knitting baby size versions of things you're scared of is like the best way to just kind of get it out of the way without all of the time commitment, get the learning out of the way, and get the kind of being scared out of the way. So when you tackle that project for yourself or for your loved one that is, adult sized, you do it with more confidence. So the last thing that I was gonna mention was just if you have not knit socks and you don't know what to pick as far as yarn goes, just find something with nylon. And if you're not sure what to grab, then head to your local yarn store, and there's always somebody who's going to be more than happy to help you out and maybe even teach you a few things while you're there or help you sign up for a class. If you were afraid of knitting socks or you just love knitting socks and you wanted to hear me talk about knitting socks, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, then definitely leave a like down below and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. I would love to have you stick around for content that I have coming up in the future. If you have suggestions for what you want to see from me or pattern suggestions for socks or anything else really, then leave a comment down below. I definitely want to hear from you, and I'm sure everybody else wants more patterns to check out as well. Until next time, I'm gonna get back to knitting on this sock that's been taking me too long, and I hope you enjoy your knitting, and I'll see you next time.